Hello and welcome to a new tutorial. In this video we're going to be looking at creating a Lego explosion using Houdini. And straight away Houdini opens up like this. These are the default settings for Houdini, which we are going to keep them as they are. There's nothing particular I want to change about this, but there are a few things to keep in mind. So first of all, we have our viewport, where we can see what we're putting in here and other such items. So for the most part today it's going to be geometry that we're putting in here. And then we have parameters up here, which I'll come to when we put something in here. And then this is going to be our node network underneath here. So we get a tree view, material palette, and an asset browser. Don't need to worry about the asset browser. We will look at the material palette a little bit later on in this video, but we're going to ignore the tree view, other than if we were to go and render something out, in which case we'd go to this out port here. But for the most part we're just going to keep to our node graph or our node editor. And to put things in here, all you need to do is tab and search for it. So the first thing that we want to put in is some geometry, and I'm going to pop that straight in there. And then you'll notice that on our top part here, we get to see all the different things for it. For geometry, I would never really change anything here. Maybe for a camera I would, but for geometry I'd leave this all alone. I wouldn't ever touch this. But what I can do now is I can go inside the geometry, and even though I've got geometry in the scene somewhere, there's nothing showing up in here, because we need to make sure that we're showing what kind of geometry it is. So I'm going to go ahead and create a sphere. So I'm going to hit tab while hovering over this area here, type in sphere, and then we can get that there. And again, just like before, on the actual object itself, I'm not going to make any changes. I'm going to drag down here, hit tab, and I'm going to look for a transform node. And this transform node, so it's not being viewed at the moment, but what I do want to do is I'm going to turn this down to 0.3. So we've got a smaller node. Nothing changes in here because we're still viewing our sphere as our first port of call. So if we select this part of the node here, it means that is what will be viewed. Just another thing to bear in mind, this is going to be our emitter for our explosion. So I'm just going to make sure that that's named appropriately. Then I've got that there. Awesome. So I'm going to come out here now, and I am just going to use the shelf tool for today because it is nice and easy, and we can just change a few different parameters as opposed to go in and create the entire explosion from scratch. So I've got my emitter selected, and I'm going to head over to the HoudiniFX tab at the top. So across the top here, we've got a load of different types of effects that we can put into place here. So we've got rigid bodies, we've got lights, collisions, particles, fluids, particle fluids, and all sorts. There's loads of stuff up here, but we're going to be focusing on the pyro here. And we're just going to go in and click the explosion there. What will happen is Houdini will take a few moments. With my computer it might take a little bit longer as well because it is a fairly old computer, and we get something like this. So this will simulate as we go, and it will take up time. So to skip all of that, I'm going to make sure first of all that we've got 100 frames down here on our timeline, and that's all we have. So we've got a few different things that are open now. So in our node network here, we've got our emitter still, which has a few extra things added to it, which we can ignore. We have a pyro sim, which we're going to change a few things in here for. So the first thing that I want to look for is our pyro solver. I'm going to be looking at the buoyancy lift here, and I want the flame to get fairly high with this. So I'm going to put it for about 5. And then if I was to come all the way over to 60 frames in, we would get a very different looking effect in here. It might take a little bit of time. So as you can see at the bottom, we're on frame 40 out of 60, and it's calculating all of this up to this point here with that buoyancy lift. So if we'll just give it a moment just to show you. Like I said, my computer's a bit slower because it's a bit older. And there we go. And then we get to see the fireball after the initial explosion. But it's coming up fairly high here, which is nice, and that's what we want. So I'm just going to take it back to back to frame 1, sorry. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at the shape, and I'm going to come in to the... I'm going to come down here. I'm going to look at the disturbance. No, shredding, sharpness, turbulence. Yeah, the turbulence. And I'm just going to turn this swirl size up to about 1.5 as well. So that means that's all now not needed, and if I was to calculate it again, which I'm not going to because it takes far too long for a video tutorial, it would calculate it all over again, but it will allow for a bit of swirl within the movement of the flames here. I'm going to have a look at the actual smoke object as well, and I'm just going to make sure this division size is fairly small, so it's already at 0.045. I'm just going to turn it down a little bit further so we get an even smaller division size within this here. And with all of that there, I can go back to the objects out on here, and we get this pyro import part here. So I'm just going to save this. I'm going to, because I did create a version of this already, so I've just saved over that, and I'm going to go into the pyro imports, and in here I can see I can export this as a simulation or as a piece of geometry itself, which I've already done because it does take a long time. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're not using this .sc. So we're going to grab all of this from this point here, go into here, find the folder that we're using, which is in here, and we're going to go to our geo folder and just call this simulation, and then paste everything but that .c. That's there. And then I can accept that, and then that I could use, I can start to save it to the file. And the entire range is here, so we've got the import from dops and then the save to file. We would ordinarily save that to the disk. So that is how we would get that working there and simulated there. So I have already done this. So what I'm going to do is, now that that's all nicely saved, I'm going to open this as a brand new. I'm going to go discard and new because I've saved it. I've got it as I want it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into the node viewer here, and I'm going to get a new piece of geometry. Again with nothing in, but this is going to be the pyro emitter or import. I'm going to go into here, and then I want to find a node called .io. And what this will do is it will allow me to bring in some geometry that's already existent, which I already have in animation, Houdini, there we go, in the geo, and this is it here. So I'm going to accept that, and then I'm going to select this load from disk, and that will take a moment, but now I have 100 frames of this here. So what might be happening here is that it is on an older version. So what I will do is I'm going to go to desktop, go to my folders here. So in animation, Houdini projects, into this one, I'm going to grab the geo from here. It is all of this. I'm going to copy this into the geo of this brand new one, and that'll take a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause the video here. Oh wait, it might not take that long at all. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause the footage here and then continue once this is all copied across.